Okay, the last three chapters for the course are all from the Dettmer text, and they really wrap things up basically with regard to collaboration throughout the whole educational process. This slide looks familiar, I'm sure. We talked about who the partners are in collaboration in our first module, all the related services folks, and they're not even all listed here, but some of you actually fit one of these categories, but all of the people who are kind of with in-house or within IU or district related service providers. And then on the right-hand column, the community support folks that we must become more and more engaged with, particularly with our students with special needs. So how do we develop a collaborative community relationship? And this is very tricky, and it really is a lot to do with the size of your community, the number of agencies available, etc. But we really do, as school personnel, need to know about what are those community services our students are receiving. And in fact, we all know that many of the services provided happen within the school, even though they are resourced from outside agencies. So folks like TSSs, for example. So we do need to become familiar with our own community resources. And if they are limited, those that are available outside the community for specific needs. There's a form on page 382 that's a nice kind of laundry list of what we should know. And hopefully your school has that kind of information or someone there does. Um, but if not, it would be important for some folks on a collaborative team to gather that information so that you have a team that's well aware of the resources and the people that they need to be included in their collaborative process. Um, all these, community agencies and IEP, and IU folks should be involved in IEP meetings when that's appropriate. So we should get to know them on a face-to-face basis. Sometimes it's administrators of court-placed facilities, for example. So there's lots of folks that we need to get to know. Professional development for these other folks with regard to IDEA and IEP process would be very important if they are not already aware of those kinds of things. So it's something to think about, that part of our roadblocks in collaborating might be that we're coming certainly from different areas, but we're also coming from different knowledge base on what it is that we have to do in the school with regard to IEP development. And it might be upon us to train some of our other colleagues from other agencies about those procedures. So the question becomes, we come from different places. We all have our own focus upon meeting the needs of students. So how do we all come together from these different backgrounds? It doesn't take long to know that depending upon your background, that you're going to have a very different sense of things and perspective on things. And so it's important that we recognize that in our colleagues. And clear communication, as we've talked about throughout the course, is critical so that we don't add misunderstanding to that whole atmosphere of already coming from a different place. Listening is so important in order to actually hear other people. Nothing is more valuable in building a relationship for collaboration than for other group members to feel as though they're being heard. So listening becomes an absolutely critical skill. Trying to be as democratic in the process as possible. In other words, um, keeping folks on that equal basis with equal time to share what they need to, time to ask questions, time to be heard, regardless of what the individual role is, treating everyone with that same kind of respect. Developing the trust. I remember clearly your discussion about what mattered most, and so many of you felt trust was the number one issue in building a strong collaboration. So that comes back again as a good review point. Trying to plan for not just emergency issues, but long-term success is an important thing to think about as a group. So you're working with the community agency for student A, they're definitely going to be involved with future students. So recognizing that we need long-term relationships in order to meet the needs of all of our students down the road. And then being able as a group to, share the credit for success, share the fact that together success was accomplished is a real core building block for a continued collaborative process. It's important to think about transition when we talk about collaboration because that brings in a lot of other agencies. And it's also important not to think of transition only as the time a student with special needs leaves our public school system or leaves the 12th grade or turns 21 years of age. We're transitioning students now from very, very young age all the way through until that 21-year point. So we need to think about those critical times where transition is only facilitated by strong collaboration between those who have worked with the student in the past and those who will work with the student in the future, and the recognition of the student's skill needs in the past, what they've accomplished and what their future needs will be, and their strengths, obviously, too. So we need to look at early childhood education, moving from early intervention for students with special needs into a pre-K or K situation, a public school or private school situation, going from middle school to high school, and from secondary school to post-secondary. And we know, too, that our districts are configured in many different ways. So often students actually have physical changes and transitions in schools from early grades to late elementary grades, depending on how the district's organized. Also, some of our students may spend times or bits of time in a situation where they're out of school altogether, being hospitalized, being provided services at home, and those again are more transitory, transitional times that we really need to collaborate on in order to make that movement as smooth as possible.